Hey, Laura. While I was enjoying shopping for daily necessities, I heard a voice from behind. Turning around, I saw my former fiancé, Ryan. I couldn't hide my displeasure from showing on my face. Don't give me that look. So, you got married, huh? Ryan remarked, as if the troubles he caused me were no big deal. Typical him, talking like he had nothing to do with anything. I let out a heavy sigh, reminded of his lack of sensitivity. Without noticing or caring, he looked us over, his gaze lingering a little too long. So anyway, he eyed my husband Michael's outfit with a smug smirk. My wife's a beauty and a doctor, but your husband looks kinda shabby. He sneered, thoroughly pleased with himself, judging Michael's clothes while laughing at his own cleverness. But Michael simply gave a refreshing smile and responded smoothly. Oh well, she's fired then. Huh? Ryan looked taken aback, his face frozen in surprise. Ignoring him, Michael took my hand and started to walk away. Let's give him what he deserves, he whispered with a reassuring smile. Thank you, I said, squeezing his hand back. As we moved forward together, ready to put the past behind us. My name is Laura. I'm a 45-year-old housewife, living with my husband Michael. There's nothing particularly remarkable about me, except maybe my talent for handicrafts. And this is, in a way, my second life. Not in the sense of reincarnation, of course. I simply broke off an engagement once, met Michael, and then got married. Hence my second life. Michael and I met after my first engagement ended, and it was he who approached me first. After we started dating, we eventually remarried. He's a calm, kind man, and I'm truly glad I married him. As for my first engagement, I feel lucky we didn't go through with it. The reason we broke it off: Ryan, my former fiancé, cheated on me. Ryan and I were childhood friends, and he was always driven and ambitious, often looking down on me for being so average. Yet, he'd often step in to protect me from boys who teased me, so I saw him as someone dependable. Our families were close neighbors, so it wasn't surprising we ended up dating through middle and high school. Our parents were thrilled about our relationship, wholeheartedly supportive. The topic of marriage came up early, and right after college, Ryan and I started living together. But as we continued living together, his unpleasant side became more apparent. Hurry up and make dinner. Sorry, I just got home. You're always so slow. Forget it, I'll just eat out. Wait, Ryan. Back then, I was working, and I usually got home later than Ryan. He didn't seem to like it, and would pile on unreasonable demands as soon as I walked through the door, then storm out on his own. Living together like that, without any real communication, was tough. Still, since I was committed to marrying Ryan, I kept trying to open up conversations with him. Hey, how about going for a picnic sometime? Go by yourself. Maybe a movie then. Not in the mood. No matter how many times I tried to suggest dates, he ignored me, rejecting everything I proposed. It hurt, and eventually, I stopped trying to talk to him altogether. Ryan took advantage of the silence and began coming home later and later. You've been drinking. That's none of your business. None of my business. But we're getting married, aren't we? In a rare moment of defiance, I spoke up. Ryan ran his hand through his hair in irritation, then muttered words that shocked me to my core. I messed up getting engaged to you. What? You have no redeeming qualities at all, he sneered, looking me up and down with disdain. I stared back at him in disbelief. You're not that cute. Your body's average. You're not some career superstar. And your housekeeping's mediocre. Just totally average. Well, I know I'm not perfect, but... He cut me off before I could finish. Plus, with our parents so close, I can't even break things off with you easily. I got stuck with a dud. Why would you say that? Just shut up already, he snapped, abruptly ending the conversation. He headed straight to the bedroom and locked the door behind him. We shared that bedroom. Without access, I didn't even have sheets to sleep with. Open the door. I called out repeatedly, but all I heard from the other side was Ryan's snoring. He had no intention of responding. In the end, I spent the night on the living room sofa with just a bath towel to keep me warm. 2 months later, my conversations with Ryan had dwindled to almost nothing. I knew deep down that I couldn't continue this relationship any longer. Thankfully, we weren't married yet, and I had a job. Moving out would be a bit of a strain, but it was doable. So every day, I kept my eyes on rental listings, silently waiting for Ryan to end things. But he never brought it up. Instead, whenever we visited my parents, he would sing my praises. Laura's such a huge help. The place is always spotless, the food's amazing, I'm really lucky. Ever since she was a kid, I'd been hoping Laura would marry you. She's such a daydreamer, you make me feel at ease knowing you're there for her. Dad, who'd always been fond of Ryan, would laugh heartily. I would sit there, watching the scene play out with a hollow gaze. Even Mom had total faith in Ryan. Was there no one on my side? Ryan had charmed everyone around me. Would I be trapped into marrying him? I felt hopeless. But then an unexpected turning point arrived. Hey, let's break up. What? One day, as I was cleaning the kitchen, Ryan sipping his coffee suddenly broke the silence. Caught off guard, I couldn't immediately respond. I was about to accept when his next words left me speechless. Met a cute girl at a mixer last month, 25, and she's a doctor. I'm gonna live with her, so you need to move out. I could barely process what he was saying. Apparently, he hadn't broken up with me sooner because he didn't have a replacement lined up. According to him, he couldn't manage on his own, and without someone, paying rent and doing chores would be a hassle. You're awful. Huh? It's no big deal. Oh yeah, she's moving in next week, so get out fast. That's impossible on such short notice. When I raised my voice, he matched my tone. Shut up. This is on you for being slow about it. And don't you dare slack off on the chores before you go, got it? He shot me a menacing glare before storming out, phone in hand. I was left standing there in stunned silence, unable to move. After that, I packed up my things and returned to my parents' house. At first, my parents thought I might have just had an argument with Ryan, but after hearing my story, they were furious on my behalf. A meeting between both families was arranged. On the day of the meeting, Ryan arrived at his parents' house with an unfamiliar woman by his side. Both my parents and I, as well as his own parents, stared at her in disbelief. She began introducing herself with a smug smile. Nice to meet you. My name is Amy. I'm dating Ryan, with the intention of getting married. Married? We exclaimed. Yes. Isn't he already planning to break up with her? She continued, glancing at me with a mocking expression, as if flaunting her victory. I may be mild-mannered, but even I have my limits. I couldn't hold back my anger any longer. I am still engaged to Ryan. This is incredibly disrespectful. And what about it? You're breaking up anyway, aren't you? Oh, are you looking for compensation? How much do you want? Amy replied with a sneer. It's not about that, I shouted, my voice rising in frustration at her rudeness. At that moment, Ryan's mother, Helen, glared at Amy in support of me. I am against this. I won't forgive anyone who hurts Laura, who is like a daughter to me. Ryan, I never want to see you or Amy again. Mom, are you sure about this? She's a doctor. She's wealthy. Ryan protested, pointing to Amy. Helen looked at him with sheer disappointment and sighed. Then Ryan's father, Gary, joined in with a calm but resolute tone. I feel the same. I don't care about wealth or status. We're cutting ties with you. Fine, then don't expect any help in your old age, Ryan yelled, pulling Amy away as they left in a huff. After they disappeared, we returned inside, and his parents immediately apologized. We're truly sorry for everything. You have nothing to apologize for, my parents and I reassured them, helping them back to their feet. After discussing things, we all agreed to stay in touch, and it was settled that the engagement would be broken off and that he would be disowned. Ryan's parents expressed genuine regret that I wouldn't become their daughter-in-law. Even though we couldn't be family, you can always count on us. Yes, we'll make sure he pays his dues. Let us know if you need anything. I was grateful for my in-laws' kind words and decided to start a new chapter in my life. By the following week, compensation had been transferred from Ryan and Amy. It was a larger sum than I expected, so I used part of it for moving expenses, left my parents' house, and relocated to a new place, allowing myself time to search for a job at a relaxed pace. 2 months after parting ways with Ryan, I began working at a new company. 2 years later, I met the man who would become my husband, Michael. I worked at a medical equipment company, and Michael was the son of one of our clients. We met by chance because we frequented the same cafe. I'd be sitting with a coffee, working on a small knitting project, while Michael read a book. We didn't interact initially, but one day, Michael struck up a conversation. What are you making there?" he asked. Oh, I was surprised by his sudden question, but from then on, we began chatting little by little, eventually realizing we shared work connections. Our relationship developed naturally, and soon after, we started dating. 2 years later, I introduced him to my parents, and we decided to get married. "I'll make you happy for the rest of your life," he said. "Yes, thank you. I look forward to our life together," I replied. We enjoyed a blissful newlywed life, though it wasn't filled with flashy activities. I had left my job to become a housewife, and I spent my days taking care of our home. Michael worked but still helped with household chores. "Are you feeling tired, Laura? I'll take care of everything today, just relax," he would say. And on weekends he'd take charge of the cooking and cleanup. I felt immense gratitude for Michael's kindness. 5 years into our marriage, we decided to buy a house. As it happened, Michael's family home was in a town right next to mine. After several discussions, we chose a home midway between our parents' houses, in a quiet residential area with nearby supermarkets perfect for us. Once we settled in, we spent a weekend shopping at the local supermarket. "Laura, you love paella, right? I'll make some for you," Michael offered. "Really? Thank you," I replied, excited. His paella was fantastic. As I wandered through the supermarket, looking at ingredients with a spring in my step, I headed toward the household goods section. "Hey, Laura." Just then, I heard a voice call out behind me. I turned around, and there stood Ryan. I couldn't help but show my distaste on my face upon seeing him. "Don't look so disgusted. So you got married, huh?" he said, brushing off his own past actions as if he had nothing to do with them. Ryan had always been tactless, I remembered, letting out a deep sigh. Ignoring my reaction, he continued, looking at us. Still, he trailed off, eyeing Michael's outfit with a smug smile. "My wife is a gorgeous doctor, you know. Your husband looks cheap." Ryan laughed mockingly, his gaze dripping with disdain as he insulted Michael's appearance. But Michael merely smiled back, calm and bright. "Oh, then your wife is fired," he said casually. "What? Ryan's face froze in shock as Michael, ignoring him, took my hand and began to walk away. "Let's make sure they face the consequences, shall we?" Michael said gently. "Yes, thank you," I replied, grateful and resolute to close that chapter once and for all. The next day, a call came through to my smartphone from an unknown number. I signaled to Michael in the other room before answering. It was Ryan. "Hey, what the hell is going on?" he yelled. "What do you mean?" I replied calmly. "Amy actually got fired," he shouted, his tone brimming with anger. I stayed completely unfazed, which only seemed to agitate him further. "What's wrong with your husband?" Ryan demanded. Taking a deep breath, I decided to tell him the truth about Michael's profession. "He's the director of the hospital where your wife worked." "Director," Ryan repeated, going silent for a moment before suddenly bursting into laughter. "Come on, stop with the lies." "Lies? Yeah, right. That guy dressed so cheaply couldn't possibly be a director." At this, I couldn't help but laugh myself. "Cheap? Those are clothes from a top luxury brand." "Wait, what?" I could hear Ryan's incredulous voice over the line. Yes, Michael preferred wearing simple clothes, but that didn't mean they were cheap. In fact, his wardrobe often included custom-made pieces and limited editions from top luxury brands. Ryan, on the other hand, had always been more interested in famous brands with large logos that showed off their label. I remembered he liked clothes with oversized logos, so he probably assumed that anything without a logo, like Michael's custom-made outfit, was no name and inexpensive. However, the clothes Michael wore that day were custom-made, one-of-a-kind pieces. For Ryan to call them cheap only showed that he lacked the ability to appreciate quality. It's like he was admitting that his sense of style was not refined. The clothes Michael was wearing were custom-made and high-end. "Guess you don't have much of an eye for quality, do you?" I remarked. "Stop brooding," Ryan snapped. "What designer are you talking about?" When I mentioned the designer's name, Ryan fell silent. This particular designer was known for making only single, unique pieces, each of which could easily cost over $10,000. "No way. That cheap-looking guy," he muttered in disbelief. "As I said, he's a director. His name is Michael Davis. Anyone can claim to be someone with a fancy title." Ryan raised his voice, clearly still unwilling to believe me. I replied calmly, "Well, go look it up on the hospital's website. His picture is right there. If you're lying, I won't let this go," he threatened, still on the line, as he apparently navigated to the website. Then I heard a small gasp of shock. "Your husband? He really is the director." "Exactly, like I told you. Now, if that's all." "Wait, please. What is it?" Ryan called out, trying to stop me. I sighed and reluctantly responded. Ryan's tone softened as he tried to sound pleading. "Since you're the director's wife, couldn't you get Amy's termination reversed? Come on, we were childhood friends, right?" The sheer selfishness of his request left me speechless. In what world does someone ask their ex-fiancé's spouse to reverse the firing of the person they cheated with? I finished firmly, making it clear that I had no intention of helping him. "No, I won't. Besides, my husband isn't the kind of person who'd fire someone out of spite." Then, he stammered, "It was just a coincidence that yesterday's events became the final straw. I'm sure your wife had her own reasons for being dismissed." Ryan seemed stunned on the other end of the line after I finished speaking. Ignoring his silence, I hung up, then set his number to blocked. Beside me, Michael nodded reassuringly, and I smiled, feeling grateful for his support. A few days later, I received a call from a familiar number. I couldn't help but chuckle at the conversation that followed. Understood. I'll set up a time for the meeting, I replied, ending the call. Before explaining everything to Michael, we decided to send Ryan and Amy a formal notice with the date and time for the meeting. Over the next few days, Amy called Michael's phone several times, but he never answered and simply logged each missed call as part of the record. Until the meeting, try to stay home. I'll handle the shopping, he advised. All right. No matter how many times I asked, Michael wouldn't tell me the reason. But knowing Michael, I trusted that there was a reason behind it, so I decided to stay at home. Finally, the day arrived. Michael and I arrived early at the hotel room we'd reserved for the meeting. Ryan and Amy entered precisely on time, with Amy smirking smugly as she saw me. Let's get started, shall we? Michael said as we took our seats. Excuse me, Director. Today's meeting is about reversing my dismissal, correct? Amy interrupted with a hint of defiance. Without changing his expression, Michael ignored her question and got straight to the real topic. Today's discussion is about prohibiting further harassment from both Ryan towards Laura and Amy towards me. Going forward, we are imposing a complete non-contact agreement. Wait, when did I ever harass anyone? And why is Amy involved? Ryan pounded the table and snapped. The water in his glass shook, spilling slightly on the table, and silence filled the room. Michael was the first to speak. It's as I said. We have evidence that you've been lurking around our home recently. What are you talking about? Ryan retorted. You were caught on our security cameras. You were even there again this morning. Eck, I was shocked at the revelation. After the call with me, it seems Ryan began lurking around our home, drawn in by the fact that our large house is quite recognizable. When Michael finished explaining, Amy erupted. What's this about hanging around your ex's place? She shouted at Ryan. It's not what it looks like, Amy. There's a deeper reason. He stammered. What kind of reason could you possibly have? She shot back. Oh, and what about you following Laura's husband around? What's your excuse for that? Ryan retorted, trying to turn the tables. Amy looked away, visibly uncomfortable. Michael continued calmly, listing Amy's behavior, claiming to be my lover, trying to get in my car, even packing lunchboxes for me. Despite repeated warnings, it was nothing short of harassment. Lunchboxes. You said you were making those for a coworker. Ryan protested, grabbing Amy's shoulders and shaking her. Amy looked at me with a pout, bitterness evident in her eyes. I knew Laura was Ryan's ex-fiancé, and I thought, I'm smarter and prettier. Why should she have the better life? And let's be honest, a director earns far more than Ryan, she spat out. So you were trying to cheat? Ryan exclaimed, aghast. Not that it's any of your business, she snapped back. Watching their argument unfold, Michael and I exchanged weary glances. After a few minutes of back and forth, they both fell silent, glaring at each other as they caught their breath. Michael addressed them again, his voice firm. Both of you need to stop your stalking behavior. Amy's dismissal was triggered by her refusal to leave me alone, in addition to her neglect of her professional duties. I was working hard. Amy muttered defensively. Really? You offloaded most of your responsibilities onto new hires, Michael responded. Amy turned pale, unable to deny it. Her plan had been to abandon her medical duties and pursue Michael, assuming she could easily steal him from me just as she had taken Ryan. A surge of anger bubbled up inside me. Sorry, but unlike Ryan, he doesn't judge people by looks or money alone. Amy's face turned scarlet with fury, her eyes blazing with resentment. But Michael spoke up again, emphasizing my words. It doesn't matter how beautiful or wealthy you are, Amy. You could never match Laura's inner beauty. Even if the world turned upside down, I'd never be interested in you. Ugh, no way. At that, Amy's pride was thoroughly shattered. She began to sniffle, her face wet with tears. Ryan, who only moments before had been arguing with her, now rubbed her back, glaring at us. Their sudden alliance was almost laughable, and I was tempted to make a snide remark about their newfound solidarity. But I held my tongue. Ryan twisted his mouth into a smirk and sarcastically spoke up. You're saying your heart is pure, but I bet you're enjoying seeing Amy and me in this situation, right? Where's the purity in that? At Ryan's words, Michael's lips moved slightly. It was a habit that appeared when Michael was angry, and I couldn't help but let out a dry laugh. Next to me, Michael put on a smile and spoke. I heard you've been borrowing money from some rather shady sources, Ryan. What? How do you know about that? When we confirmed the stalking, we had it investigated, Michael said, pulling out some documents from his bag. The papers detailed the amount of money Ryan owed, and which financial institutions he had borrowed from. Debt? What does that mean? No, this is, well. Amy, apparently unaware of his debts, stared at him in shock. Ryan, it seems you were fired 6 months ago. Was the reason for the debt to cover up losing your job? How do you know all this? Wait, no, that's not it. Ryan hastily denied it, but it was already too late. Amy glared at him, her face turning bright red. Fired? What do you mean you weren't working? So all the living expenses up until now have been on debt. This is your fault. You spend money recklessly. Even though you earn a high salary, you barely save any of it. As the two of them started arguing again, I sighed in disbelief, and my smartphone rang. Hello? Yay, we're in the farthest room. Did they arrive? Yay, looks like it. At the same time I spoke, the door to the private room was knocked. When it opened, Ryan's eyes widened as he saw who was standing there. Dad, Mom. Yes, the ones who called me were Ryan's parents, my former in-laws. After hearing about the commotion from my parents, they had called to apologize to me. They also asked to set up a meeting because they had something important they wanted to discuss. The former in-laws glared at Ryan, sat down, and pulled out a piece of paper. We came here to have you sign this today. What's this? Ryan turned pale as he read the text on the paper, and no wonder, as it was a document stating that he would renounce his inheritance. Renounce inheritance? What about the house? What about the savings? What are you going to do? We're leaving everything to Laura. What? Why? At Ryan's raised voice, Gary also responded in a loud tone. Of course, how could we leave anything to you? Laura invited us to her wedding and even celebrated her birthday with us. You've been disowned, so you have no right to inherit. Gary's words were followed by a firm nod from Helen. Ryan stood frozen, his face pale. What am I going to do? I have debts, you know. I was hoping to pay them off with the inheritance. Throw away those childish ideas. Gary shot back, sealing the matter. Ryan slumped down, defeated. Next to him, Amy also looked just as pale. It seemed a lack of money was no exaggeration. What are we supposed to do now? I heard Amy mutter. Laura, will you marry me? What? After a few minutes of silence, thinking the discussion was over, Ryan suddenly said those words. If he had said that over 10 years ago, when we were dating, I might have been happy to hear it. But now it only felt repulsive. I rejected him clearly and firmly. Absolutely not. I'm already married to Michael. And you have Amy, right? But he didn't give up. His eyes pleaded as he desperately begged. Please, come on. We're childhood friends, right? Please, help me. If we marry, the inheritance will come, and I can pay off my debts. Unbelievable. It was all about money, money, money. There might have been a little bit of affection left from when we were kids, but that was completely gone now. I smiled brightly at him. He seemed to interpret my smile as something positive, and grinned happily back at me. But it was no longer the pure smile I remembered from our childhood. It was a smile full of greed. The Ryan I once liked is gone. I finally felt like I could put the past behind me. There was no longer any affection left. Still smiling, I spoke calmly. I absolutely won't marry you. The thought of marrying you makes me sick. Besides, I'm very happy now. So, don't ever come near me again. Ryan, who had never been rejected so clearly before, stared at me in shock, still frozen in place. Seeing this, Gary handed him a pen. Ryan signed the papers with that pen, then left the private room. Wait a minute, Amy said, as she left the private room. Finally, it seemed like everything was over. I let out a sigh of relief and signaled to the server. Soon, a variety of dishes were brought out one after another. Thank you so much for today. Please enjoy all the food. My former in-laws seemed delighted, eating the food and praising how delicious it was. Michael and I also enjoyed the meal as we watched them. Afterward, I heard that Ryan and Amy got a divorce. Amy's dismissal wasn't reversed, and although she tried to work at another hospital, it seemed that her bad reputation had spread everywhere, and no one would hire her. Amy, who had always been careless with money, had no savings, and now she was apparently getting by selling brand name items and doing part-time jobs. However, her haughty personality made it difficult for her to stay in one place for long. As for Ryan, he apparently disappeared without a trace after that. He might have taken on dangerous jobs to pay off his debts, or maybe he was sent abroad for work. Either way, it was his own responsibility, and it no longer concerned me, so I had no interest in it. Occasionally, I heard that money was being transferred to my former in-law's account, so he was probably still alive. Despite cutting ties, he was their only son, so I sometimes wished they would at least let me know that he was alive. My former in-laws gave me most of their assets as a gift while they were still alive. From that, I paid for their stay at a comfortable nursing home. Although they initially insisted on paying for it themselves, they weren't fond of accepting gifts, so I asked to return the favor a little. After some consideration, I secured rooms for my parents and my former in-laws at a luxurious nursing home. For now, they continue to live in their neighboring homes as usual, with plans to move to the nursing home if needed. Both my parents and my former in-laws were very happy to know that they would be living next door to each other there. Recently, Michael succeeded in a complicated surgery and became quite famous. He started receiving many TV interview requests, but for him, patients always came first. He said that interviews got in the way of his work, so he declined most of them. That's why I fell in love with him, his commitment to his work. I couldn't help but fall in love with him all over again. By the way, we recently adopted a child. Actually, Michael couldn't have children due to an accident when he was little. I knew this and married him. However, Michael loves children immensely. Watching him care for pediatric patients, I couldn't help but think, I wish we had children. That's why we discussed it many times and decided to adopt a child. The child who came to us is a 6-year-old boy named Eric. He had been placed in a facility right after birth. The moment our eyes met, I knew for sure this was the child for us. It seemed that Michael felt the same. and we immediately started living together as a trial. Recently, he officially became part of our family, although there's still some hesitation. Having Eric in our home has made it even brighter and livelier. Not only that, but he is incredibly smart and is quickly absorbing everything Michael teaches him. He had already expressed his dream of becoming a doctor before we adopted him, so Michael is fully committed to his studies, helping him along the way. "Mom, what is it?" I responded, savoring the joy of hearing him call me for the first time. Today, I had promised to make pancakes with Eric. Pancakes are Michael's favorite food. Little by little, we're becoming a family. As I lined up the ingredients in the kitchen, I thought to myself, "All right, Eric, shall we get started?" "Yay!" With an energetic reply, we began cooking. Excited for the life ahead of us, I cracked the eggs, ready to create new memories together.
Leave the house and don't take anything with you. Fine by me. Just stop making life miserable for Sophia and the others. What on earth are these people talking about? But something inside me snapped at that moment. All right, I'll leave then. Good riddance. That'll get rid of an annoyance. We can finally live happily just as a family. With those snide comments from my sister-in-law Catherine and her husband Robert, I packed my bags and left. Why didn't you tell us? Now, the in-laws have finally caught on. But it's too late. Let them suffer, serves them right. My name is Anna, a 32-year-old office worker. I married my husband Ken 3 years ago. I met Ken through work. He would often come to my workplace for business, and I was drawn to his hard-working attitude. During a casual night out with coworkers, I ran into Ken at a bar and we ended up drinking together. As the evening went on, we found ourselves sitting next to each other and engaged in various conversations. Turns out, we both attended the same high school. Ken is 2 years older than me. Apparently, he was a senior when I was a freshman. But we never met. Maybe we passed each other in the hallway. That's a funny thought. It's hard to imagine we walked the same high school hallways, meeting only later in life. Back then, I was likely immature, full of that teen energy and noise. Who knows, maybe he saw me in the hallways and found me annoying. Thinking about it now, I'm glad we met after we both matured a bit. That night out was the catalyst for Ken and me growing closer. He eventually asked me out to dinner, and we started meeting up after work. One date led to another, and we became a couple. Ken was kind, mature, and someone I could rely on. Gradually, I found myself falling for him. Our relationship progressed smoothly. And about a year in, Ken popped the question. "Anna, you're the one for me. I think it's fate we went to the same high school. Will you marry me?" "Yes. I'd be honored." And so, we decided to get married. Next, we had family meetings with each other's parents. My parents were quite fond of Ken, which put me at ease. "Who would have thought you both went to the same high school?" "That school has a great culture. I have a coworker from there who's really dedicated. A trustworthy person, I'd say." My dad can be quite stubborn, so hearing him say that was a relief. Ken had graduated from a prestigious university and worked for a reputable company. So I wasn't too worried, but it was nice to have my parents' approval. Then we visited Ken's family for another family meeting. That's when things got a little uncomfortable. Ken's parents weren't exactly the warmest people. "So you're Ken's fiancé? You're quite plain, aren't you?" "We were hoping for a supermodel or at least the daughter of a big company's CEO, given where Ken works." "Hey, Dad, Mom, that's rude." "Just kidding. You always take things so seriously, Ken." "Right, don't take it to heart. just parent humor. Sophia, my mother-in-law, and William, my father-in-law, were clearly mocking me. You didn't go to a famous university, and I've never heard of your company. But as long as you focus on housework and have children, it won't be an issue. They made it sound like I was just a housekeeper and a baby-making machine. That family meeting made me instantly uncomfortable around my in-laws. Nevertheless, we wrapped up the meetings and got married. Married life was blissful. We both worked hard at our jobs and shared household chores. Ken was an excellent cook, even better than me. So I always looked forward to his meals. Whenever I made a request, he'd whip up that dish, and it would always taste amazing. Even when I'd come home tired from work, eating Ken's cooking would lift my spirits. Of course, when it was my turn, I put my all into cooking. Ken would always compliment my cooking, saying it was delicious. I really liked the depth of flavor in Anna's cooking. I guess I tend to overcomplicate things a bit, you know? No way, Ken. Your food tastes like it came straight from a restaurant. I feel like we have our own personal chef. Really? That means a lot to hear you say that. We were always full of praise for each other. That's why we've been able to have such a harmonious married life. 2 years have flown by since we got married, and we're still as close as ever. But there's been one nagging issue. We haven't been able to have kids. Now, it's only been 2 years, so we're not exactly in a rush. But the pressure from my in-laws has been substantial. When are you going to get pregnant, Anna? Sophia, you asked about this just last week over the phone. These things don't change overnight. What are you talking about? If you keep procrastinating, that's why you won't have children. Are you sure you're even capable? What? Did you hide that from Ken when you married him? Absolutely not. If you're lying, I won't let it slide. Sophia often cornered me like this. Eventually, I underwent fertility testing and reported to my in-laws that I was fully capable of having children. They weren't exactly thrilled, but at least they understood I could have kids. Still, they continued to heap on the pressure. If you're capable of having kids, then hurry up. What a useless daughter-in-law. Being pressured like this only makes it harder to conceive. Every visit to the in-laws' house became an ordeal. And both of them would only criticize me when Ken wasn't around. Sophia would often call to confirm Ken was away before launching into her tirades. Life with Ken was great, but dealing with the in-laws was causing me a lot of stress. I felt uneasy, fearing that I'd have to endure their criticisms indefinitely. However, amidst all this, another issue arose. William, Ken's father, became frail and needed nursing care. And, of course, the in-laws expected us to move in with them. Ken is the eldest son, so it's only natural that he helps out. Since you can't have kids, the least you can do is be useful. They continued to press us like this. And Ken, unaware of the emotional toll his parents were taking on me, broached the subject of us moving in together. Mom seems to be struggling a lot. I really want to help out if I can. What do you think? I was really torn. Living together would likely be hard. My in-laws have been giving me a hard time behind Ken's back. If I outright say no, Ken would be shocked. So, I decided to lay down some conditions. Okay, I get that Sophia and the family are having a hard time. Can I add some conditions of my own? Sure, go ahead. I'm the one asking for a favor, after all. Thanks. First off, I won't be taking care of William. Normally, that should fall on Sophia or their actual son, you, Ken. Also, I want to continue working. If you can agree to these 2 conditions, then we can live together. As I said this, Ken looked at me seriously. He might be disappointed. Maybe he'll say it's a problem if I'm not willing to cooperate with his parents. But Ken looked me in the eye and said, "All right. I accept your conditions. I'll make sure not to put any burden on you." Facing Ken, who looked at me straight on, I decided to trust him. And so, we moved into my in-laws' house to begin our life together. They seemed to think they could boss me around, as Sophia quickly started issuing orders. "Anna, please take care of William. And also, could you clean the shower and handle all the cooking?" Sophia said this as if it were a given. But I trusted Ken, so I stood my ground. "I won't be doing any nursing care for William. That's not my role. I'll help out with household chores as much as I can, but not to the extent that it interferes with my job. So, don't pile everything on me." Hearing this, Sophia's eyes widened in anger. "What? What are you saying, Anna? If you won't do it, then who will?" "That would be the job of you, Sophia, or his son Ken." "What are you talking about? There's no way I'll let Ken do it. You should do it." Sophia yelled at me. And during dinner, she said, "It seems Anna doesn't care about us at all. She doesn't even want to help with William's nursing care. All I asked for was a little help in tough times." Sophia tried to make it seem like I was the one at fault. She probably thought Ken would scold me. But Ken said, "Well, those were the conditions for living together." "Huh?" My in-laws were surprised. Ken continued, unfazed. "When we agreed to live together, Anna and I made a promise. She won't assist with any nursing care, and she will continue to work." "What? You can't be serious." The in-laws were speechless, stunned by how things had unfolded. Inside, I struck a mental victory pose. I regretted not talking to Ken about the harassment from the in-laws sooner. From that moment on, they couldn't boss me around anymore, and they seemed frustrated. For the most part, I lived peacefully without any unreasonable demands. Of course, I still helped with chores and contributed money to the household through Ken. I thought the in-laws would resent me if I gave the money directly. Then William's health started to decline, and he needed to be hospitalized. The doctors said the treatment and hospital fees would be quite expensive. Sophia was really stressed about it. "I'm on a fixed income now. Why does this have to cost so much?" Ken had reduced his work hours to help care for his dad. So our income had decreased too. Seeing Sophia struggle, I decided to help out financially. I told Ken, "Give this to Sophia and say it's from you," offering to cover William's monthly medical bills. Ken initially refused, but he really cares for his parents, so I insisted. "Don't be shy. We're married, after all," I said. Ken replied, "Thank you, this really helps." Grateful for my support. We continued our lives together while William underwent treatment. Then, one day, an unexpected visitor arrived. Catherine, my sister-in-law. "So, Dad's in the hospital?" "Tough break. But that means there's an empty room here, right? So we can move in, can't we?" Catherine had barely set foot in the house before she dropped this bombshell. We'd only met her a few times, like at our wedding and hers, and at family events. Since we moved into the in-laws' house, she'd never visited. So her sudden appearance and proposition caught me off guard. It seems she wants to live here. Honestly, I'd prefer if she and her husband moved in and we moved out. But Sophia declined, saying, "Ken's here now, and Dad might come back, so it's not possible." Catherine seemed to have expected this and quickly backed down, saying, "Yeah, figures." However, she did make it clear that she was ready to move in any time. And from that point on, Catherine started visiting the in-laws' house more frequently. Today, I made dinner inspired by what Mom taught me. What do you think? Catherine had been frequently cozying up to Sophia. It seemed like she was eager to replace us in our joint living arrangement. I had an inkling that something was off about Catherine. Could she be hiding something? Around that time, an unexpected event occurred. Ken got into a car accident on his way home from work and passed away. I rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. I was devastated. To lose my beloved partner so soon. I had wanted to make so many more memories with Ken. The in-laws were also grieving over the sudden news of Ken's death. Even after the funeral, I couldn't come to terms with Ken being gone and felt really down. My boss gave me an extended leave, hoping I would recover soon. But being at the in-laws' house, my heart felt no peace. I had paid for William's medical treatment for this month and planned to stay there until I found a new place. I was also a bit worried about Sophia being alone. We might not like each other very much, but we've both lost someone dear. We're both hurting, I thought. But then Sophia trampled all over my good intentions. The tipping point came one day when Catherine and her husband visited.
Why is Anna still here even though Ken has passed away?
Catherine questioned Sophia like that. Sophia chimed in. I was thinking the same thing. We've been busy with the funeral, but we're not obliged to keep Anna, an outsider, here. Fueled by Sophia's words, Catherine and her husband became even more assertive.
Outsiders should leave, and leave your assets too.
Exactly. Don't burden Sophia and the rest any longer. What on earth are these people talking about? But something in me snapped then. Fine, I'll leave. They looked surprised when I easily agreed, but then they smirked. Now we can get rid of the troublemaker. We can finally live happily just as a family.
Don't worry, Mom. From now on, we'll be the ones living here.
As they spoke those words, I packed my bags and left. A month had passed since then. Living in a studio apartment near my workplace, I had been focusing on my career. Then one day, I received a call from an unknown number. Hello? Thinking it might be work-related, I answered. It was Sophia.
Anna, why didn't you tell me? I had no idea you were the one paying for William's medical bills. And the money in the house, it wasn't Ken but you.
It was too late for the people in my in-laws' house to realize the truth. They had it coming. I thought it would make things easier if we said the money came from Ken. Truthfully, Ken was cutting back on work to help with William's nursing care, so I was the one making significantly more money.
So, that's how it was. I'm sorry for not noticing. Can you help us again?
No way.
What? Why?
I always tried to be minimally supportive as family, even when mistreated by you and others. But you continued to harass me without knowing the truth, even trying to kick me out. I've put an end to my marital ties with the late Ken. We're now complete strangers. Please figure out how to handle William and your daughter's family issues on your own. I said that. And hung up. Then, I blocked her number. I later learned from a relative still in contact with me that William had tried to force Sophia into a divorce to prioritize his own treatment. He probably thought they could afford it if one less person needed supporting. However, Sophia refused, insisting she would only agree to a divorce if she got a huge settlement. Right now, their family is a mess, embroiled in legal battles. Both are being emotional, but they'll soon realize the lawyer fees will bleed them dry. Eventually, there won't be any assets left to divide. Catherine and her husband, it turns out, had debts, and they were close to being kicked out back then. In-laws have just now realized the fact, but it's too late. They were planning to mooch off my in-laws. But that failed miserably as my in-laws are now on the brink of divorce. Currently, Catherine and her husband are living in a cheap apartment and are asking relatives and friends for loans. However, no one is lending them money because they can expect that they will never get it back. Their debt will continue to grow with interest, making their situation even worse. Knowing my in-laws are spiraling downward like this, I thought, serves you right. I decided to put them behind me and move on. Of course, I'll never forget Ken, who was kind to me. I plan to live my life to the fullest so that someday, we'll have a lot to talk about in heaven.